5 spine-chilling sinister true horror tales from the haunted Appalachian Mountains revealed. Ellen could feel her heart pounding in her chest as she drove the winding road through the Appalachian Mountains, the towering trees like skeletal fingers reaching toward the sky. The farmhouse that stood at the end of the gravel drive was dilapidated, but it promised a fresh start. She glanced in the rearview mirror at Liam and Mia, their faces fresh with hope. "This will be our sanctuary," she chirped. Yet, as they rolled into town, the smiles of the townsfolk felt too wide, bordering on forced. It was in their eyes a hollow glint, shadowed by something unspoken. Days passed, and the calm of rural life turned into a silence that seemed to tighten around Ellen's throat. The broadband? Non-existent. The rustle of the woods at night became a symphony of whispers. Then came the lightning flashes that illuminated the twisted trees, which seemed to whisper secrets with each crack of thunder. Something sinister lurked at the edges of her sanity. A local legend began to creep into her mind, one she overheard at the town's general store. A spirit that watched over children, they said. Protecting them. Ellen shivered. Was it warmth or threat that hung in the air? Each evening, she'd glance out the window, unease crawling up her spine at the shadows that danced just out of sight. Then, one stormy night, everything shifted. The wind howled like a beast, and rain beat against the windows. Shadows sprang to life, dancing and flickering in the dim light of her old lamp. Suddenly, a series of soft knocks echoed through the hollow house, sending icy tendrils of fear creeping through Ellen's body. Was someone out there? Distant cries reached her ears, riding the wind in a raspy whisper. Ellen jumped from her seat and rushed toward the door. As she flung it open, panic seized her heart. Liam, only 5, stood just outside, gazing into the dark like he'd seen a ghost. "Mom! I saw a neighbor," he squeaked, eyes wide, shivering in the rain. A chill gripped her as he slipped from her grasp and darted into the night. "Liam!" she cried, sprinting after him, but panic surged. Where was everyone? She glanced around. Her cries met nothing but muffled silence. Turning back toward the house, she saw familiar faces of her neighbors, smiling but now twisted with suspicion, lurking just out of sight. Weren't they supposed to help? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Their eyes no longer sparkled, they dimmed. What did they know? What truth lay buried in their smiles? As dread washed over her, Ellen began to poke into the town's history. Rumors entwined with folklore led to whispers of a guardian spirit, but a darker tale lingered, to a predator. The more she uncovered, the more she realized the threads of her sanctuary were fraying. The folklore of a spirit guarding children felt overshadowed by a monstrous figure watching from the shadows, feeding off fear. She walked back to her house, heart racing, feeling watched. The shapes outside grew more defined, the whispers melded with the rustling leaves. Where was Liam? Had he fallen into the clutches of this folklore? Hope flickered and dimmed like the old lamp, each room growing colder, more suffocating. What if he wasn't just lost? What if the true monster was the town itself, hiding in plain sight? The familiar faces now loomed menacingly in her mind, devouring the last semblance of safety. As the storm raged on, Ellen's thoughts spiraled into a single question: what darkness awaited her beyond the trees, waiting to claim them all? Ellen stood frozen in the doorway, the rain spattering against her skin like shards of ice. Her heart raced as she turned back to the house, instincts roaring in her ears to retreat. But where was Liam? The night stretched around her, dark and suffocating, its silence thick enough to choke on. "Liam!" She screamed again, voice lost in the storm. Panic clawed at her throat. She darted into the deep shadowed yard, eyes cast frantically over the twisted branches of trees swaying wildly in the wind. A flash of lightning illuminated Liam's small figure, a fleeting moment that sent fresh dread surging through her. He was there, just by the edge of the woods, squatting down and staring. A primal instinct gripped her, that wasn't he just curious, there was something wrong, something unnatural about the way he moved. "Get away from there!" she shouted, feeling the familiar stir of parental fear churn in her gut. He didn't respond, just continued to look into the dark. Ellen's feet tore across the ground toward him, mud splashing beneath her shoes. "Mum," he whispered, his voice wavering, "there's a person, no, Liam." She reached him, snatching his arm, and tried to pull him back. But then she saw them. The townsfolk were there, their faces masked by shadows, watching with those eerie smiles carved deep into their expressions. Their eyes glinted, reflecting the lightning like predators spotting prey. "What do you want?" Ellen screamed, clenching Liam closer. An answering murmur rose from the crowd, a sound that sent chills spiraling down her spine. "Join us," a voice whispered, low and melodic, yet sinister. "We keep the children safe." Suddenly, the ground beneath her trembled, not from the storm but from an unseen presence. There was a rustling in the woods beyond, an ancient call that mingled with the wind, and for the first time, fear paralyzed her limbs. Frantic thoughts raced. The town itself was coming alive, shadows shifting, stretching toward them. "Please, we can help him," another voice cooed, honeyed with false warmth, woven through with an undercurrent of something far darker. "The Guardian hears their cries." Ellen's breath came in sharp gasps. What Guardian? The town's folklore flooded her thoughts again, a protective spirit wrapped in the guise of a nurturing mother. But was it really a guardian, or a twisted notion with fangs? No. She turned, practically dragging Liam as she stumbled toward the house. "We're leaving." But the way back felt different now. Each step made the shadows lengthen, closing in like a blanket smothering any trace of safety. As they neared the front door, she could hear the whispers swirl louder around them, mingled with the crack of thunder. It was a chant, a reverence for the darkness, like the townsfolk were calling to something beyond the realm of the living. "Stop!" A booming voice shattered the whispering chaos. From the mass of shadowy figures, one stepped forward tall, wearing a wide-brimmed hat that concealed its face. A heartbeat of silence stretched, then shattered as it called to the others. "The forest hungers tonight for offerings." Glimpses of panic flashed in the crowd. Ellen seized the moment and darted for the door, her heart pounding like thunder in her chest. "We have to get inside." No sooner had she flung the door open than she felt the cold grip of fear tighten around them as the townsfolk surged forward, their smiles morphing into rictus grins, eyes burning with some unspeakable hunger. Holding tight to Liam, Ellen stepped inside, slamming the door behind her, only to hear a sharp tap against the wooden frame. The air grew heavy, filled with a weight of unspoken truths. "What do they want?" Liam asked, his small voice cracking, tears forming at the edges of his eyes. "They want to take you from me," she whispered, hands shaking as she leaned against the door, her heart racing. But another thought crept in. No, it wasn't just that. What if the darkness was outside at all? Suddenly, a loud crash ripped through the air, and the shadows shifted outside. Ellen stumbled backward, caught in a web of disbelief. It wasn't just the townsfolk, something monstrous slithered within the trees, waiting, watching as the door rattled beneath their desperate grips. An unyielding voice drifted through the cracks. "Join us or lose him." Would Ellen become another piece in this dark puzzle? Or could she fight against the tide of horror creeping closer? The night seemed to stretch infinitely as the storm raged on, and the real terror began to close in. What would happen when morning came, if they even made it that far? Ellen pressed herself against the door, heart racing, every bone in her body screaming for her to bolt. The night outside pulsed with life, an ominous rhythm that blended the murmurs of the townsfolk and the rustle of the trees into a haunting symphony. "What do you mean, lose him?" she whispered, clenching Liam's hand tightly. The boy looked up at her, wide-eyed and terrified, his small frame trembling. "I don't know, I just heard them," he stammered. "They said he is special. They can keep him safe." Ellen's pulse quickened. She glanced around the dimly lit entryway, filled with shadows clinging to the corners. The air felt thick, nearly suffocating, as if the house itself was holding its breath. It was clear now that whatever evil lingered outside had seeped into the very walls surrounding them. "Liam, we need to find a way out," she said, steeling her voice. But deep down, fear clawed at her with unrelenting force. What if they were already trapped? The room suddenly darkened. A flash of lightning illuminated the narrow hallway, and in that instant, Ellen caught a glimpse of a figure standing at the end, a silhouette shrouded in darkness, features obscured. It stood still, yet something about it radiated a primal sense of threat. "Mom, who's that?" Liam's voice was barely above a whisper, trembling with fear. "I don't know," she breathed. "Stay close to me." Ellen inched toward the staircase, desperate to put distance between them and the door. She peered through the dim light, each step echoing in a chilling rhythm. The figure remained motionless, watching, waiting like a predator stalking its prey. Lightning crackled overhead again, illuminating the hallway more fully. The figure's form shifted, and she saw a flash of white skin. Teeth? A smile? "Join us," it was a low hiss, the words curling through the air like smoke. "Run!" she cried, shoving Liam toward the stairs. But before they could bolt up, a chorus of voices reached them from outside, rising like a tide. The villagers' chant crescendoed, melding into an otherworldly harmony that vibrated in her bones. "Mom, please!" Liam tugged at her, fear etched deep in his small face. "We have to." Just as she was about to turn, the door creaked ominously, forcing her attention back. A deeper voice, commanding and assured, spilled into the house. "Your surrender is not optional." Ellen's heart sank. This was so beyond anything she could handle. The stories of ancient guardians and horrific sacrifices eerily resonated in her mind. They were not mere legends. They were realities, darker than she'd ever imagined. The door shuddered violently, wood groaned, and the chanting grew louder. Shadows pooled at the edges of the room, creeping closer with a sinister intent. She felt the walls pulse as if the house itself was alive with the fear that consumed her. Suddenly, the figure at the end of the hall stepped forward, revealing its face, a grotesque mask of familiarity and mockery. It was the mayor, twisted somehow but unmistakable, his grin stretched too wide, eyes glinting with hunger. "Come to us, Ellen. Let go of what you cling to." Panic surged, overwhelming every thought. She had to escape, but where? "Mom! They're coming in." Liam's voice shattered her thoughts. Outside, the front door splintered under the weight of the villagers pushing against it. The sounds intensified, filling the room with an unsettling harmony of whispers and growls. Ellen moved instinctively, yanking open the basement door. "Get down!" she shouted, ushering Liam in. She followed, closing it behind them just before the door burst open. Darkness enveloped them, the air heavy, filled with unsettling silence. "What do we do now?" Liam whispered, his voice tinged with hopelessness. "We find a way out," she replied, though doubt gnawed at her resolve. She rummaged through the clutter in the basement. The smell of damp wood and decay clung to her like a shroud. But the whispers outside hadn't stopped. They seemed to seep through the walls, surrounding them. "Liam," she could hear them chant, "join us." Suddenly, the lights flickered, then died completely, leaving them in absolute darkness. "What if they find us?" Liam's fear surged again. She gripped his shoulders, desperate. "We won't let that happen." But as she echoed her own reassurance, their whispers began to blend into a deafening roar, and a chill swept through the basement. Something evil took form in the shadows. Ellen's heart raced as dread clawed at her throat. Would the darkness close in around them? Were they truly trapped? She was about to answer when the sound of something slithering through the darkness reached her ears, a presence more sinister than the townsfolk could ever be. Mother, it hissed, the voice melding with her own deepest fears. What unspeakable horror was lurking just beyond the shadows? Would they be able to face it before it was too late? The basement hummed with a dark energy, the air thickening as if it were alive, wrapping around Ellen and Liam like a cold embrace. The whispers crescendoed, battering against the walls with an unholy urgency. Fear gripped Ellen's heart, tightening into a vice that constricted every logical thought. "Stay close," she murmured, trying to sound brave though her voice trembled. Mom, Liam's voice quivered. "What is that?" The slithering grew nearer, a raspy sound like nails scraping against wood. Cold dread washed over Ellen. She strained to see through the impenetrable darkness but found only an all-consuming void. "Hold my hand," she instructed, forcing herself to focus. A sudden crash above them sent shockwaves through her spine, rattling her bones. The villagers were breaking in. She could picture their faces twisted with desperation, longing for the thing they thought Liam represented. "Join us," the voice coiled around her again, this time distinctly echoing back the fear she had planted in her heart. They wanted to draw her in, to ensnare her in their mirage of safety. "Liam, we need," a broken sob escaped her before she could finish. The walls creaked, spacious and oppressive, cloaked in shadows that offered no sanctuary. "We need to find a way out of here." The basement door rattled violently, the framing buckling as heavy bodies pressed against it. Somehow they could get inside. Ellen grasped Liam's hand tighter. "We have to move." They crept through the suffocating darkness, their footsteps muffled by the damp ground. Ellen's instincts screamed at her, screaming to run, to hide, but the only light source was a fractured window at the other end, far too distant for comfort. "Mom?" Liam's whisper returned, shaky but laced with feigned courage. She hushed, feeling their eyes through the thick blackness, the darkness pressing upon them like breath on their necks. Every instinct told her to turn back. She reached out, fingers brushing against a cold metal railing leading upward. The stairs. Their only escape route. But as she took a breath to muster courage, the whispers redoubled in intensity. "Join us." It was as if the walls echoed their malevolent tune, a tempting siren-esque call that warped her thoughts. "Mom?" Liam squeezed her hand, his young voice laced with panic. "What if they don't let us out?" She didn't answer, but her heart answered for her, a dark pit that threatened to swallow her whole. The shadows seemed to stretch, crawling closer, each one representing a fear she had suppressed. Tales whispered at campfires and bedtime, the door above creaked, and heavy footsteps thudded against the creaking wood, sending her every nerve into overdrive. "They're here," Ellen gasped. Uncertainty clawed at her. "What do we do?" Panic washed over her like ice water, paralyzing her for a split second. Then, with a surge of bravery, she shouted, "We go now." They clambered up the stairs, limbs flailing against the damp surface, urgency propelling them forward. As they reached the top, the door burst open, wood splintered under the pressure, revealing a swarm of nightmarish faces, twisted and raging with hunger. Ellen swung the door wide, desperately pushing against the tide of darkness threatening to envelop them. "Run!" She shoved Liam out into the night, the storm fury welcoming them like a wolf's maw, sharp and unforgiving. But as they broke free, the wind whipped around them, carrying the echoes of that haunting chant. She felt something, an icy grip on her spine. In that moment, she knew they weren't escaping, they were merely stepping into a trap set for them long before they arrived. There was a clearing ahead, but shadows danced around them, whispering secrets all too easy to uncover. "Liam." She turned back, only to see the mayor's grotesque form emerging from the darkness, his wide grin piercing through the storm. "Come back, it's safer here." Ellen's heart pounded, panic boiling over. "We have to keep moving." But Liam seemed frozen, eyes wide as he turned toward the mayor, entranced. "Liam, no." Her voice pierced the night, but it felt like an echo, lost against the howling winds. What darkness awaited them in that eerie embrace? Would they fall for the mayor's trap, or was escape somehow still within reach? Ellen's body twisted with urgency, but fear held her son in place, tugging at the child's innocence like a spider's web. She fought against the instinct to retreat, knowing that staying meant danger. Liam. Don't listen to him. The flicker of street lamps danced on the silhouettes around them, casting shapes that contorted into grotesque versions of the villagers she once knew. It was as if life itself had morphed into a nightmare, every shadow stretching and shifting ominously. "Mom, I don't know," Liam stammered, his small frame trembling as he stared at the mayor, whose smile widened, revealing teeth like jagged gravestones against his darkened face. "Come, Liam. There is peace here." The mayor's voice rolled like fog, heavy and inviting, wrapping around them like a noose. "No. Move." Ellen yanked her son's arm, dragging him away from the mesmerizing grip of the mayor. They sprinted into the tree-line, breaths puffing in the cold air as frantic adrenaline pushed them forward, but the forest was alive, roots and branches reaching up from the ground to trip them, eager to ensnare. The whispers grew louder, fraying at the edges of her sanity. They sounded like the villagers chanting, pleas laced with malice. "Stay, join us, we can't." Ellen shouted, gasping for breath. Each panic-laden step felt heavy, as if the earth itself had turned against them. Suddenly, a rustle emerged from the underbrush. "Mom! Look out!" Liam's warning came too late. A shadow lunged from the trees, a figure clad in rags, face hidden beneath a hood that billowed with darkness where a neck should be. Ellen shoved Liam aside just in time. The figure collided with her, throwing her hard against the damp ground. Her breath escaped as though the wind had been knocked out of her, leaving her momentarily gasping for a reprieve. "Mom!" Liam's voice fractured amid a wave of haunting cackles, twisted laughter hanging thick in the night. Ellen fought, pushing the shadow away, struggling against the grip of a world gone mad. "Run, Liam! Get to the house!" But he hesitated. Her heart sank as she grabbed a piece of jagged rock from the ground, using it to fend off the lurching figure that returned, intent on dragging her into the dark. With a swift motion, she swung the rock, connecting with a dull thud against a shoulder before twisting away from the figure again, its howl piercing the night. "Liam! Please!" Panic surged as she focused on her son, whose wide-eyed body trembled at the edge of the clearing. The mayor loomed behind him, arms stretched wide, inviting and sinister, the shadows flickering like tongues around him. "Stay here, child. It's too dangerous out there." Something deep inside Ellen snapped at the sight. "No!" She lunged for Liam, outstretched fingers straining against the cold air, desperate to bridge the gap. In that fleeting moment, as their gaze held, the world around her fell silent. The stirring whispers hushed, the cacophony of the storm dying down, leaving only the threat hidden beneath the surface. But Liam's face twisted, confusion and fear battling for dominance. Tears shimmered in his wide, innocent eyes, entrapped in the deceptive safety of the mayor's presence. "Mom, I just want to stay." "No." The scream escaped Ellen's lips before she could stop it, raw and primal, a beckoning of long-buried dread. Suddenly, the mayor's grin softened, shifting into frustration. "Very well then." Before Ellen could blink, shadows shot toward Liam, wrapping around his limbs like roots of a vicious plant snaring its prey. She lunged forward, a mix of terror and fury coursing through her veins, fueled by the survival instinct roaring within her. Just as she reached him, the ground rumbled beneath their feet. A dark fog billowed from the forest, swallowing the villagers who had approached, now morphing into hideous figures, grotesque appendages stretching to reach her. "Mom, help!" Liam shouted, fear-stricken, his movements becoming weaker. The fog thickened, cocooning them both in darkness, pulling them down into the void where whispered promises turned to cries of despair. Ellen fought against the opaque grip of the shadows, desperately trying to disentangle her son from their clutches. But the shadows were relentless, and the mayor's laughter echoed in the night, a sound that twisted and tugged at the edges of her sanity. "Join us." As the suffocating darkness closed in, Ellen felt her grasp slipping, a tidal wave of despair washing over them. Was it too late? Would they be swallowed whole by the very darkness that lurked in the corners of their lives? With one last surge of strength, she screamed, "No! I want to let you take him." But the whispers only grew louder, drawing her in with a chilling promise. Join us. Would the shadows consume them both, or could Ellen break free in this moment of desperation? Ellen's vision narrowed to a pinhole as the darkness coiled around her and Liam. The whispering grew into a cacophony, 1,000 voices merging into a singular, sinister chant. Join us, join us. Desperation surged through her like fire. She swung again at the shadows engulfing her, but they rippled and flowed like smoke, preventing her from breaking through. Each thrust of her rock felt weaker, her arms trembling with exhaustion. "Mom!" Liam's voice was small, a feeble cry that barely broke through the thick murk. "I can't. They're holding me." Fighting the urge to collapse, Ellen focused on the horror in her son's eyes, the innocence slipping away under pressure. "Look at me!" she cried, her voice a flickering flame in the suffocating darkness. "You're stronger than this. You can fight, Liam." As her words hung in the air, there was a heartbeat of silence. The shadows shifted, momentarily loosening their grip. Liam's eyes sparkled with a glimmer of recognition, a spark of defiance igniting behind his tears. "I'm scared," he shouted, pulling against the tendrils pulling him down. Ellen felt a surge of hope. "I know, but we can't let them win. Remember the stories I told you? You're brave, just like those heroes." Suddenly, the shadows recoiled, as if struck by her words. The mayor's laughter darkened, echoing around them. "Foolish woman. Hope can't save you now." Ellen felt the ground tremble again, power shifting beneath. A low growl rumbled through the trees, and she sensed danger closing in. "We have to go now," she yelled, her heart racing as she grabbed her son's hand. With one fierce pull, she yanked him away from the mist. They stumbled backward just as the darkness lunged toward them again, clawed fingers snapping at their heels. Running through the trees, limbs clawed at Ellen's arms, pulling her back. Each step felt like quicksand, slowing her down, yet desperation propelled her forward. "We're almost there. Just keep running." The clearing opened ahead, a breath of night air hitting them hard. But the figures behind were relentless, still chasing them, beckoning. "Stay, join us." The fleeting glimpse of their old home appeared, its once livable facade now warped, twisted by shadows, as if the house itself wanted to devour them. It loomed like a specter, drawing the darkness toward it. "Mom! Please!" Liam cried, collapsing on his knees, the shadows dragging him back. He slipped from her grip, and she felt the heat of panic strike her heart. "No!" Ellen screamed, as new anger coursed through her veins. She was stronger than this. "You will not take him." Her desperation transformed into rage. She lunged at the shadows, fists swinging, ready to claw her way through hell itself. The darkness screeched, reeling back from the fierce determination in her eyes. "Liam! Reach for me." She extended her hand, desperation fueling her. He stretched his out toward her, pulling against the pull of the shadows. But then a whisper surged out from the fog, sinister and smooth. "You can't fight what you can't see." Let him go. The shadows coalesced into a dark figure, the mayor's shape looming larger than life. "Bring him to join us, Ellen. It's so much easier, so much nicer." Ellen felt the grip of fear. A chill coursed through her bones. "Join you? No. I'll lose him forever." But Liam, torn between the light of his mother and the dark promise of the shadows, began to sway. "Mom, I just want to stay." Liam. The ground shook again, and the fog thickened around them, swirling like a tormenting tempest. In that moment of chaos, Ellen felt something shift. An ancient pulse beneath her feet, a heartbeat of the very land that was pulling, and then, somewhere in her mind, a memory sparked. A story she heard as a child, a tale about light fighting through darkness. It fueled her defiance. Liam. You're not alone. With one last surge of fury, she sprinted forward, determination blazing in her chest, ready to collide with the darkness head-on. But as she lunged toward him, the shadows coiled tighter, and the mayor's laughter rose to a fever pitch, drowning out her own cries. It's too late for you both. Suddenly, the ground beneath them erupted, rending the fabric of night. A blinding light shot up from where the family home once stood, illuminating everything in ghostly brilliance. Ellen stumbled backward, shielding her eyes as the darkness shrieked, ripping free from its grip. No! No! You can't leave! But as the shadows began to peel away, Liam reached for her. I'm coming. Would the light save them, or was it just another trap masked in a desperate facade? Ellen felt the warmth of the light wrapping around her like a protective cocoon, but it was fleeting. She could see the shadows retreating, their desperate howls piercing the night air as tendrils of darkness twisted into the shape of faces, mouths stretched open in silent screams. Liam! She shouted again, her voice swallowed up by the radiance, her heart still pounding against her ribs. The figure of the mayor seemed to flicker in the glare, his crooked grin momentarily frozen in shock before melting away like ice in the sun. This is impossible! He bellowed, rage lacing his tone. The darkness split farther, revealing glimmers of forgotten memories among shards of intense light, as though clips of happier times danced around her. But Ellen's focus was only on Liam. She could barely see him amidst the bright glow, but she felt a pulse and energy flowing from the ground, entwining through the air and directly into her heart. Hang on, I'm coming. She dashed forward, weaving through the remnants of shadows clawing at the light, desperate not to slip through the cracks again. Mom! His small voice cut through the chaos, grounding her to a singular purpose. The shadows writhed but kept dissipating under the pressure of the oncoming light. But the mayor, he was still fighting. You think this is over? He screeched, and the shadows spiraled close again, rushing back toward her like a tidal wave. No! Ellen screamed back, instinctively raising her hand and pushing against the darkness ferociously. The ancient pulse beneath her began to roar, vibrating through her legs, amplifying her strength. She could feel the energy shifting, drawing power not just from her, but from all the trauma and fear tethered to this cursed place. Oh, yes! The mayor hissed, slipping between fear and laughter. Embrace it. The more you resist, the closer the end will come. Ellen's knees threatened to buckle, but she stood strong. You won't take my son. Not now, not ever. The light brightened, exploding like a supernova, and with it came a sharp pain in her head. Images flickered, unfamiliar faces, tortured screams, laughter turned to wails. Fight it! She shouted, pouring every ounce of love, fear, and loyalty into her plea, urging the light to envelop her fully. Liam's hand gripped harder, defiance filling his little frame. Was that her son fighting back too? Then the shadows around them rippled strangely, as if split along a seam. The air crackled as the darkness peeled open on either side of them, revealing a pathway made of bright soil, each step on that path momentarily free from the grasping shadows. Keep going. Don't stop. Ellen urged, her voice steady against the rising panic. The ground felt alive under her feet, coursing with energy and determination. We can do this. The shadows lunged again, their frantic grasps pulling at fabric and skin, stinging like ice against fire. Ellen's focus never wavered, locking onto her son as they stepped further down the illuminated path. But just as hope flickered back into view, the mayor's laughter echoed maliciously. You think you can escape? The darkness is part of you. With that, the light faltered slightly, dimming as the mayor stretched his hands toward the earth. The ground beneath them trembled again, the path buckling. Ellen felt the pull of the familiar dread seep back in, wrapping around her ankles like chains. Mom, I can't hold on much longer. Liam whimpered, his energetic flame flickering. "Help me." "No!" Ellen cried, her heart racing, panic clawing at her throat. They were soon nearing the mouth of a cave-like maw that seemed to yawningly emerge from the glowing ground. The shadows twisted towards it, like snakes beckoning their next meal. "Run!" Ellen shouted, thrusting herself and her son into a dead sprint down the path. Yet the shadows still pursued, winding around them faster than the flickering light could banish them. At that moment, she screamed as a shadowy limb lashed out, catching her arm. The darkness felt cold and insubstantial yet somehow burned like fire, and she yanked herself away, pulling Liam with her. "We have to fight back. Don't give up." But as they bolted toward the opening, the darkness truly began to envelop them again, reminding her of the weight of despair looming at their backs. The sound of haunting whispers intensified, each syllable laced with the promise of despair and inevitability. Then, with a last act of will, the ground beneath them surged, and just before entering the cavern, she felt a memory surge through her childhood again, an echo of laughter, tales of gallant warriors overcoming darkness. "Together! Together!" Liam shouted, and for a heartbeat, their hands clasped tighter, their resolve igniting into something almost tangible. But as the shadows snapped at their heels, an unfathomable darkness bulged behind them, and as she went to take her next step, Ellen could feel the ground beneath her crumbling. What caught her eye was a figure materializing in the darkness. It was close. Closer than she realized. And it was smiling. Ellen froze. Just for a moment. Because the grin on that face was far too familiar. Ellen's heart skipped, caught in a web of terror as the figure loomed closer. A twisted vision of familiarity hung in the air, the shadows deepening around the smile that made her insides churn. "No, it can't be," she whispered, her breath catching in her throat. "Hello, Ellen," the figure sang, the voice dripping with honey, yet laced with poison. An echo of childhood memories surfaced, happiness now jaded by fear. "Stay away from us!" she screamed, the protective instincts blaring in her mind. Liam clutched her hand tightly, his little fingers trembling as they stood at the brink of the abyss. Such anger, such fire. The face Ellen's sister, Sarah, grinned wider, the shadows reflecting her madness. Time had twisted her features, hollowing out joy like a gaping wound. "You've come so far, but you know that darkness is our true nature. You can't escape it." Sarah Ellen's voice dropped to a whisper. "I thought you were gone." "Gone? No, dear sister. I've become something more." The words curled around her like smoke. "This place, it has welcomed me with open arms. Why should I resist? Why should you?" Ellen fought against memories creeping in like spiders. Sarah's laughter, their shared secrets, woven together with warmth now doused in cold dread. "You're not her. You're stronger than you ever were." She interrupted, transforming into something monstrous for a split second. The shadows undulated, reflecting her fractured psyche. "Look around. We were chosen." Liam whimpered beside her, tugging at her hand. "Mom, it doesn't feel right." "I feel," his voice trailed off, lost beneath the whispers that coiled through the air like serpents, taunting them, drawing nearer. "Listen to him," Sarah cooed, eerily calm. "You cannot save him from what he is destined to be." Ellen's heart slammed painfully against her ribs, each beat a drumroll of impending doom. "No. I will not let you take him." Suddenly, a force pulled at her from behind, threatening to drag them away. The pit opened wide, a gaping maw hungering for souls. Shadows fought each other like beasts, churning violently, but she gripped Liam's hand tighter, yanking him toward the light. "Run!" she shouted, adrenaline surging. "Don't stop." They sprinted, the ground shuddering beneath them like a living thing. The cavern yawned wider, mocking them with its darkness. But the shadowy tendrils lunged, splitting through the air with a sickening squelch. "Stay with me." Ellen's voice cracked, fear clawing at her throat. The path illuminated in flashes, the light warping around them, mixing with memories. Sarah's laughter turning to harsh echoes. Together. Liam shouted again, his courage igniting within her. Together. But the shadows were relentless, pulling at their edges, fingers grasping mercilessly. Ellen glimpsed horrific faces, each telling a story of despair, echoing the truth. You know. She bellowed, the clash of light and dark folding in on itself. We will break this cycle. As they dove forward, the figure of Sarah melted into the dark, replaced by shadows that flicked and flickered. Your will cannot withstand forever. Her voice ricocheted around, the fullness of her sister lost in darkness, battling against her former self. Suddenly, the ground dropped beneath them, a chasm opening. Ellen's stomach lurched as they fell, plunging into an abyss of howling winds. But the moment was fleeting. They landed with a sickening thud on uneven ground. Ellen glanced around, walls pulsating like a living heart. The shadows slithered past them, no longer afraid. Mom, where are we? Liam asked, his voice trembling. Ellen couldn't answer. The air crackled with despair, every heartbeat echoing in the cavernous silence. The shadows circled around them, blocking escape. Now you see, a whisper slithered from the darkness. This is where all stories begin to end. The chilling realization coursed through her. This wasn't just a fight for survival. It was a revelation of their past, a manifestation of unfiltered darkness that had always lurked. Ellen's grip on Liam tightened. They stood on the threshold of that very darkness, the weight of so many choices pressing down. Then the whispers shifted, dark and guttural, curling around them like vines. All choices lead you back to us, and your true fate is still waiting. Ellen's heart raced, her mind spinning, grappling with the layers of despair. She would not let them win. But as she looked up, new, larger figure emerged from the shadows, towering and formidable, filled with malice. It stepped forward, laughter trembling like thunder around them. Ellen's eyes widened. Who was this? And now, you've truly arrived. The shadow beckoned. What awaited them in the pitch of that unknown darkness? Ellen's breath quickened, her mind racing as the towering figure advanced, its presence suffocating. The caustic laughter echoed all around them, each peal curdling the very air, wrapping them in unshakable dread. Liam clung to her side, his wide eyes sparkling with fear. In this nightmarish realm, the familiar darkness seemed alive, tracing every anxious breath, every frantic heartbeat. Leave us alone. Ellen shouted, voice trembling. The shadows coiled tighter, slithering like snakes eager to devour the light she clung to. Alone? The figure rasped, its voice a rumble as deep as the earth itself. What a cruel joke! You're never alone in the darkness. You've always been a part of it. Ellen swallowed hard, fighting the way memories threatened to seep through her resolve. Chilling flashes of Sarah flooded back, the sister once full of life now reduced to a twisted echo. She had been lost in the dark, but how had it come to this? Mom, it's really scary, Liam whispered, tugging on her shirt. She felt his little body trembling next to her, the weight of his innocence pressing down like an anvil. She dared to glance back at the figure, whose features flickered in and out like a failing light. It wore Sarah's face, but it was wrong, distorted, a mask of torment. You don't have to fear me, sweet sister, it said, the voice mocking her. Join us, join your sister, become whole. No. Ellen could hardly believe the words escaping her lips. Her heart thumped violently against her chest. She refused to submit to this nightmare, to fall into line with a darkness that beckoned so seductively. But the shadows tightened their grip. They hissed and rasped, echoing voices from the past begging for comfort. You can't outrun what you truly are, Ellen. The walls around them pulsed violently, and with it came a swarm of memories, shadowy figures dancing through swirling mist. Fragments of laughter, moments of joy, shadows of regret swirled chaotically in front of her. Each fragment reached for her. You know you want this. Mom, help. Liam cried, as tendrils of darkness began to crawl up his legs. Panic surged through Ellen, turning the fear into pure instinct. She lunged forward, grasping him under the arms. "No, Liam. Don't let them pull you in." As she yanked him free, the shadows howled in protest, the cavern groaning as walls breathed menacingly. They burst through the darkness only to stumble into another chamber, one filled with screeching silence and an oppressive weight that threatened to crush them. As the shadows morphed, she caught glimpses of other figures, lost souls wandering aimlessly, their eyes hollow and desperate. "Don't look at them, Liam. They're not real," she urged. "Keep your eyes on me, don't let your fear distract you." But the ground began to quake beneath them, shadows roiling and twisting, threatening to swallow them whole again. Ellen's heart raced, her thoughts jumbled. Voices rose higher, blending into a cacophony of discord that drowned out reason, seeping into her mind. "Ellen. It's me." The voice was softer now, echoing sweet sorrow. "I'm here. We can be together." Suddenly, from the oppressive dark, bubbles of light sparked around them like fireflies, illuminating the chamber with a disturbing serenity. Were they escape routes or temptations? The question twisted in her gut as the shadowy figure loomed closer, its laughter churning the air thick with foreboding. Each step it took felt like a hammer pounding at her sanity, its presence enveloping them. "What do you see, Ellen? Light or darkness?" Heart hammering, she gripped Liam tightly and prepared for the worst. What awaited in those flickering lights? Was she ready to choose? The shrieking laughter rose again, and Ellen plunged forward toward the lights, determined to resist the grip of darkness closing in. Each minute felt like an eternity. But she couldn't back down. "Not now. Run toward it," she yelled, urging Liam to follow without looking back. With the taunting laughter chasing after them, they dashed toward that uncertain glow, hope mingling with fear. Suddenly, an icy tendril shot out, catching her ankle, dragging her back into the depths. Ellen screamed, panic clawing at her chest as she fought with all her strength. But just before the darkness enveloped her, she glimpsed the figures within the light stretching their hands out toward her, faces twisted but pleading. Was this salvation or damnation? "Mom!" Liam shouted, reaching toward her. The world teetered on the brink as she teetered on the edge of hope and despair. Ellen, the shadow crooned, layering temptation in its smooth, deadly tones. "You cannot escape, you are bound to find your place in darkness." But who would she choose to become? Was there any way out of this tangled web of fear and choice? The bright light erupted like a star, pushing against the shadows that clawed toward them. Ellen felt its warmth wrap around her and Liam like a protective embrace. The darkness hissed, recoiling at the radiance, and with that spark of hope, Ellen drew strength. "Keep running, Liam. We're almost there," she urged, her voice breaking through the roar of despair. They sprinted toward the light, shadows thrashing at their heels, desperate for their return. But as they neared, a piercing bellow erupted from the figure of the mayor. "You cannot leave. The darkness craves you." It lunged forward, a talon of shadow reaching out, but the light fought back, illuminating everything in shimmering waves. The cavern walls shook, fluttering like a giant heartbeat. "Join us, or suffer the consequences." "Mom!" Liam screamed again, his tiny face crumpling with fear as he stumbled. Ellen felt every nerve in her body scream to protect him. "I want to let them take you. We want to give in." She yanked him forward, their feet pounding against the trembling earth as they barreled into the blinding glow. The swirling figures within the light shifted, faces mingling with joy, beckoning them with outstretched arms. "You belong here," echoed sweet voices. "Forget the darkness. Find peace." Ellen hesitated for just a moment, doubt slinking into her heart. "Mom!" Liam urged, his eyes wild with urgent innocence. "Don't listen to them." His plea cut through her confusion like a knife, grounding her. She gripped his hand tighter, squeezing the tiny warmth that reminded her of everything worth fighting for. Together. Remember? We are stronger together. Together. He echoed, and in that instant, Ellen felt a surge of clarity. The shadows twisted, whispering promises, but she turned away, focusing only on the light and her son. They lunged into the column of glow, the light bursting around them like 1,000 fireworks exploding at once. The darkness screamed as it receded, a wailing echo that shattered the very foundation of fear that held them captive. The moment they stepped into the light, a rush of memories washed over her: endless laughter, safe stories told by firelight, the warmth of hugs exchanged. It flooded with pain and loss but transformed it into strength, building a shield around her and Liam. You can't escape. The mayor snarled, the darkness swirling into a vortex of rage behind them. You are bound to this place. No. Ellen shouted. We will not be defined by fear. We make our own path. With each step forward, those memories held the shadows at bay, forcing them to retreat back into the dark corners of the cavern. Ellen felt the ground vibrating with energy, and in that moment, she had a revelation. The chains binding Sarah to this darkness were weak. This was about family, love, and the choices that bind them. Sarah, I love you. But this isn't you. You can't be lost forever. Ellen cried out into the swirling night. She felt her heart clenching, hope bursting against the weight of despair. A glimmer flickered in the dark. The familiar voice returned, twisting through the shadows, but it sounded softer now. Ellen, you can still save us. Join me, Sarah. We can break this cycle. Ellen shouted, her spirit echoing against the chaos. We can fight together. A fissure opened in the darkness, revealing a glimpse of her sister's face, still twisted, but with a flicker of doubt in her eyes. The shadows around her writhed and pulsed, fighting the flicker of peace Ellen offered. Don't let them win. Ellen pressed, hearts pounding, reaching for the girl she once knew. You're with me. Remember who you are. Mom, please. Liam tugged her hand, eyes wide with belief, heart igniting the threads of their connection. And then, the darkness faltered, a breath held in uncertainty. Ellen? Sarah's voice wavered in the void. Help me. Came the childlike integrity that had always bound them together, that had never faded. Help us. We're family, Sarah. The shadows recoiled as a radiant light began to shine brighter than before, casting away the last chokehold of darkness. The warmth surged. Waves crashing against the anguished whispers that had captivated them for so long. Let her go. It spluttered, a last attempt to ensnare them, but the power of love flowed between them, now a force more potent than dread. She belongs with us. No. Ellen cried out. We belong together. Love cannot remain lost. Brightness erupted, swallowing despair, igniting hope. Sarah's face emerged from the shadows, confusion etched across her features, innocence glowing faintly amidst the dark. Help me, please join us. Ellen surged forward, resolute. You are not this darkness. We can break free. As their hands reached at last, the surroundings erupted. Light surged forward, obliterating shadows with brilliant intensity. Together they were stronger, and with one final burst of energy, the darkness shrieked, swirling back into nothingness. They emerged into a clearing bathed in morning sunlight, vibrant colors splashing against their faces. Fresh air filled their lungs, freedom washing over them like a wave. Liam looked up at her, eyes sparkling. We did it, Mom. We're okay. Ellen felt tears stream down her cheeks, relief flooding over her. We made it, Liam. We're free. As she turned to look back at the forest, she sensed Sarah standing beside her, no longer a twisted shell, but a spirit glowing with life, her smile warm. Thank you, sister, she whispered, for bringing me back. The shadows that had haunted them faded into the past, leaving behind just a hushed whisper of warning against the mighty strength of love. And in that moment, beneath the brilliant Appalachian sun shining down on them, Ellen took Liam's hand, stepping forward into the unknown ready to forge a new beginning, building their sanctuary filled with light. "Let us go home," she said softly, and with one last glance, they left the darkness behind, the shadows extinguished behind them, finally at peace. This is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe now, so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm, and flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion.